Welcome to a new time. Welcome to a new era.
This ain't WCW. This ain't Monday Night Raw. This ain't SmackDown. This ain't even WWE.
Feel the wrath of the pythons. You shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania. This is where the power lies.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family.
I got a 66 and 2/3 chance of winning because Kurt Angle knows he can't beat me and he's not even going to try.
It's time to step into the squared circle and get it done.
Welcome everyone to the Legends and Champions podcast, coming to you this week from the United Kingdom. And what a week it is. My name's Andy Evans, coming to you as always from Weymouth here on the south coast of the sunny UK. It is actually sunny at the moment. And this week, slight change of plan. All right. So we were going to be doing Die Rocky Die, and that episode is actually coming next week. But because yesterday, as we record this, so on Tuesday, Mike released the full interview with Keith Elliott Greenberg relating to his book, Bigger, Better, Badder, on the topic of WrestleMania 3. We've shaped things up a bit, and WrestleMania 3 is this week's show. It also won the listener poll on Celebrate Wrestling as well. So in a moment, Stefan and I are going to be talking all about WrestleMania 3, but what I would like to do is send you back to Celebrate Wrestling. Send you back to the podcast feed. And if you haven't listened to it yet, I want you to stop us, turn us off, and go to the Keith Greenberg interview. It runs for about 35 minutes. Mike does an amazing job chatting to Keith, talking all about the book, Bigger, Better, Badder, talking all about what it meant to record, to research the book, to write the book, how he did the book. And it does open it up for a further discussion down the line. But go check that out. In fact, in a minute, when we go to break, I'm going to play you a little clip of that interview just to kind of whet your taste buds and get you ready. So pause us. You done that? Okay, you done that? And we're going to pretend you've paused it, and now we're going to do this. Welcome back to Legends. Hope you enjoyed that snapshot of the Keith Elliott Greenberg interview. Well, I hope you've listened to it before you've come back. It worked much better in my head than it did actually live. But what a week in professional wrestling. Monday Night Raw this past week from Brussels in Europe. 7:30 bell time on Netflix. How good was that? Didn't have to stay up till 1 a.m. What an epic promo between possibly the greatest of all time, John Cena, and the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, further setting up this WrestleMania main event taking place in a few weeks' time. There's so much happening in the world of professional wrestling. I can't keep up, but I hope you can by subscribing to Celebrate Wrestling, listening to Mitch and Dimitri from the Greek World Order on the alternate commentary table every Saturday. And of course, Sundays, it's Mike McGuire with McGuire on Wrestling, the only way to properly celebrate wrestling. Plus, get your voice heard on the Facebook group. All you need to do is search for Celebrate Wrestling on there, answer a few questions, because that's what Meta tells us we have to do, and then Mike will let you in, and you can be a part of the great community where we all get involved, all of the hosts and the guest. Keith Greenberg is part of the community as well. Great for having him there. So come and join us at Celebrate Wrestling. Right, let's not waste any time. Let's go to our first break of the evening, which will be coming up in just a second, where we will then be coming back talking all about one of the most iconic pay-per-views of all time, WrestleMania 3, straight after this.
The alternate commentary table, ACT, brought to you by the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed. Listen, it's Mitch, it's Dimitri. We got this little pod thing that we do every single week where we talk about the week in wrestling and the way in which we do it from the other side of the railing. Right, Mitch?
I like that.
We're coming at it because we love it. We hate it. The alternate commentary table, ACT. Download it anywhere where you're getting your podcasts.
Sure.
he told this story I'd never heard, that the day before WrestleMania III, they were trying to time out the show, and he saw a member of the ring crew getting his head shaved because they were trying to time out how long it would take to shave someone's head, and Adrian Adonis was getting his head shaved. And I can't believe I've gone all these years and no one ever told me the story.
That's funny, though. That's something you would never think to actually time out. And
we are back with more Legends and Champions. At the beginning of the break, well, not the beginning of the break, at the beginning of the show, I said you were changing things up, and we were going to be doing Die Rocky Die. We're not. We're doing WrestleMania 3. Die Rocky Die is now next week. It just happens this way. Stefan, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, my friend. Always excited to get the show. So when it's show day, I'm happy. I'm buzzing. Let's do it.
It's showtime. First off, before we go any further into this, I know we're a Legends and Champions show. I know we talk about the old school stuff, but I really would be remiss if I didn't get your thoughts on that epic 25-minute promo that took place this past Monday night in Brussels on Raw between the legend John Cena and the American whipsnake Cody Rhodes. What's your take on the first time we have heard, very briefly, from John Cena since the heel turn at Elimination Chamber?
I've been waiting 25 years for this. Honestly, it's all I've wanted for the past 25 years. Whenever John Cena's been on screen, his name mentioned is just, honestly, this is exactly what I was after. Bit disappointed there's been no music, new theme and that, but I quite like the way he explained, you're not having it because you want it. It's my voice on the song. And I loved it. It was perfect. And I really, as I said before, I didn't give a damn about the Cena farewell tour. I'm sorry, I've never been a Cena fan. But I'm here for it now. I'm just so looking forward to seeing how this goes, because this is the Cena I've been wanting for many, many, many years.
So I've been thinking about this, and we're not going to spend too much time on this, but it is WrestleMania related, and we are in WrestleMania season. Could we possibly see a double swerve at WrestleMania? So odds are, just go with me for a minute, odds are Cena is going to walk out of WrestleMania 41 as a 17-time world champion, right? We then know he's going to be, well, from what we're told, leaving in December at the end of the year. That's it. The retirement tour is over. But what if he doesn't walk out of WrestleMania as the 17-time world champion, and instead it's all a screw job by The Rock and Cody Rhodes? Cody Rhodes goes heel and joins up with The Rock, and then that last match in December is John Cena versus the final boss for the final time ever.
I like the way you're thinking, because I've had that in the back of my mind about a double swerve. What if, because, a lot of people did actually expect Cody to accept The Rock's offer at Elimination Chamber, and then when it didn't happen, because not many people expected it to be Cena, and it happened, and that's one of the reasons why it's the most viewed segment in WWE history on social media. And I could see, I wouldn't put it past them now, because of the way we're kind of seeing a new way of doing things under Triple H and The Rock and all that. The way they do it's the small details, the long storytelling, and it's kind of like, if you wait long enough and that it will pay off in some way, and then you'll go, oh my God, yeah, that makes sense now. I know now why they did that. And I could totally see a double swerve, as you explained. I don't know if it'll be December. There's nothing to say that Cena can't go to Mania next year, and then Mania next year be his final match.
Well, I don't think they'll do that. I don't think they'll do that, only because of the fact they very clearly said all the way through this, it's his last Elimination Chamber, it's his last WrestleMania, it's his last SummerSlam, so I don't think they will. Not to say they won't. I mean, there is a chance he could win it at WrestleMania the heel turn could still happen. He could go to SummerSlam and drop it, right?
I think SummerSlam would make more sense, seeing as it's like the second Mania of the year, and the fact that this year they're making SummerSlam 2 nights going forward, just like they are with WrestleMania. So it is a very strong possibility that SummerSlam could play a huge part in what does or doesn't happen at Mania this year.
But they are also talking about doing a December pay-per-view, working title. I've heard, I can't quote my sources on this, but I've heard it's called The End. Now, whether or not, because that's the last thing for John Cena. Now that's been on various news sites, including WNS and Wrestling Headlines. So potentially, that could happen. There is going to be one final match. We know that, between John Cena and an opponent. My money, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, but I would go to Betfred or Ladbrokes or any other betting agency around in the UK at the moment, and I would put some money on it being The Rock versus John Cena in that final match, because he's not going to want to go off into the sunset as a heel, right? Or
no,
or is he? I don't know. He's not a face. He's not. No,
I don't think he will. Yeah, I don't think he will. I mean, I have also had play in the back of my mind, what if the Cena's playing The Rock by going along with this? That that there's an alternative motive there for Cena as well, other than potentially becoming a 17-time champion. It is all these ifs, what ifs, and maybes, and it is going to be speculation, but I'm here for the ride. But as you say, this potential working title of The End, be it December pay-per-view, I've always said for many years, I'm quite surprised that WWE don't have a big pay-per-view at the end of the year, like, celebrate like the holiday season, Christmas and all that. Like, we've had Survivor Series over Thanksgiving. We have SummerSlam in the summer. WrestleMania is sort of like, just after Easter. Rumble kicks off the pay-per-view year, or the premium live event year. So I actually think, to be fair, a pay-per-view called The End, and having it as a big show in December to see out the year and, hit the reset button, getting ready for people to get hyped for the Rumble and the road to WrestleMania would be perfect. So who knows? But I'm here for it, Andy. I'm here for it. I'm so excited to see how this plays out.
In fairness, they have done it before. They did it in 2005. It was called ECW's December to Dismember, and it was so bad they never did it again. So guess what? In December, we will be covering ECW's December to Dismember.
You heard it here first, folks.
It's going to be a 5-minute show. Right, let's crack on with WrestleMania 3, because as we are recording this, 24 hours ago, Mike released the epic full entirety interview with Keith Elliott Greenberg relating to his book, Bigger, Better, Badder, which focuses on not only the event, but the business, the scene, the aftermath of WrestleMania 3 and the World Wrestling Federation. It is an absolutely incredible book, and I would thoroughly recommend it to anyone. In fact, before we came on air, you would have heard a snippet of that interview in the break. Check it out right now on Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed, wherever you listen to us, whether or not that's Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Pandora, or Podbean, and search for that interview. 35 minutes. Mike really goes into granular detail with Keith. It does open the floodgates for a second return. So who knows where that might lie. I did give Mike about 30 odd questions to propose.
And he's not exaggerating here, people. I saw the list of questions that he put. I mean, that was like an hour or plus long interviews worth of questions. It was quite impressive because every question was really good, actually. There was no dumb questions. So I have to give Andy some credit there, because every question there had its purpose and was a really intriguing question to hear answered. So I give you props on that one, Andy.
But what Stefan doesn't tell you is they were categorized. So there was category 1, the event; category 2, writing the book; category 3, your perceptions; category 4, matches. It was all broken down.
It was good. It was good, really good.
But I'll tell you the reason why. Because WrestleMania 3, for me, is such a personal event, right? It's going to be interesting, this, because you told me in the chat when we were preparing this that you don't really like this event. You don't consider it. You don't consider it to be one of the best. Well, yeah. Pause. We'll touch on it in a second.
Yeah.
For me, take the card out of it, right? Because there were some absolute clangers on this, and I'm talking King Kong Bundy, Hillbilly Jim, and the little people, the midgets, which watching it back on Netflix now, so wondering why they haven't edited some of this out, because it's not exactly politically correct anymore. But there are some crackers. You've got the obvious one, which which we'll touch on, I'm sure, Savage versus Steamboat for the Intercontinental Championship. But even looking at Adrian Adonis and Roddy Piper, or Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus the Barber Beefcake, or the Can-Am Connection, or the Rock Don Morocco, and of course the main event, it had something for everyone. But it was also the first WWF event I ever saw on VHS back in 1988. Didn't see it in 1987, because what you guys in North America don't know is the event would air. We wouldn't get it on VHS over here in the UK for a good 9 to 12 months post-event. So even when they were airing on pay TV, when they were airing on Sky or whatever back in the day, we still had to wait almost a year to get that hard copy video, right?
Yeah, don't use Silvervision in your long delays.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why they're no longer here. But, if you didn't have Sky, you didn't see the event. You had to rely on WWF Magazine. You had to rely on, magazines. Because there was no internet, there was no news sites, right? You couldn't just type in www.wrestlingobserver.com because it wouldn't come up. You had to do it the old-fashioned way. And I remember this being the first one. And I sat there in my lounge with my father watching this 3-hour mega event. And my nan, bless her, she gave me the VHS as a Christmas present. And Dad and I on Boxing Day, and we sat there and we watched WrestleMania 3. Go forwards to 2007, September of 2007, about 10, 15 days after our birthday. So my dad and our birthday was on the 10th of September. And I might get a bit emotional here. So if I do, Stefan, you need to jump in.
Yeah.
My dad passed away
Here's what I found.
Shut up. My dad passed away about 10 days after our birthdays. And one of the last things that my dad and I did, and he was ill, was we ended up watching WrestleMania 3. So this event means so much to me. Forgetting the fact that it was maybe not the best wrestling card or anything like that. It will always hold a place, because it's a bit like the Star Trek Next Generation episode, The Inner Light, where Picard plays the flute, right? That was one of my father's favorite songs. And when his funeral was happening, we played it. That's what his coffin was brought down to, was The Inner Light. So every time I hear that, I burst into tears. There's something, it resonates with you, right? There's something about it that resonates.
Yeah.
And that's why, part of the reason why I was so passionate about us doing Mania 3, and why I was jumping up and down for joy when Celebrate Wrestling listeners on the Facebook page voted for it to be the number one. Not that there was anything wrong with the other events, but this one is the one that you've been waiting to kind of sit there and talk about.
Yeah. And I completely understand where you're coming from. Doesn't matter how good or bad or average the WrestleMania 3 is, depending on your personal perception. For you, obviously, it means that so much because it's the experience of watching it with your dad, that sharing those memories. And, I get that totally. I don't know if I remember saying to you, I know I said it to some people, obviously, I was in Philadelphia last year for WrestleMania 40. And my very first night, I couldn't sleep. And a friend of mine, we decided to walk the walk all the way down to where the Rocky statue was. And my grandfather, who was not only a wrestling fan, who was the one that got me into wrestling, but was a Rocky fan. He loved his boxing. He loved the Rocky movies. And I remember watching Rocky 3 with him. And we had the scene with the unveiling of the statue. And I was like, I remember saying to him, oh, wow, that's cool. And he said, "Oh, that statue's real. It's there in Philadelphia." And I made a passing comment at such a young age, not realizing that it may ever happen. And I went, "Oh, maybe if I go to America one day, Granddad, I'm going to go see the statue," and not, ever thinking it would ever happen. And when it did, I remember calling my mum up the following morning and saying to her, "I went to the Rocky statue." She said, "Oh, did you?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, when I was there, I felt like my grandfather was there. And as cheesy as it sounds to quote a line from Rocky movies, and I actually looked up at the sky when I had my hand placed on the statue, and I actually went, "Yo, Granddad, I did it." And I had this emotional moment. I welled up. So I get where you're coming from when you say that about your dad. I mean, my grandfather was very much like, my key father figure for many years before my stepfather come along. So I get that bond. And there are so many of us wrestling fans that are lucky to have had that experience with a father, a mother, a grandfather, a grandmother that have, we've shared those memories with. So, and I think it's brilliant that when even as old as we get now, we can take ourselves back to those moments and, still get that little chill that little shiver down the spine when you get taken back to those days. And, those are the sort of memories that mean the most.
What is your fascination with talking about our ages?
Well, we are getting older. Everyone does as they get older.
It's like 3 weeks on the trot now. You've made some sort of a comment about our ages.
I'm in denial.
So am I. I can see 50 coming up quite close. I don't want to do it. I'll tell you what, if I look half as good as what Joe Aguinaldo does, it'll be amazing. Right, let's get into it. WrestleMania 3 took place March the 29th, 1987 at the Pontiac Silverdome in Michigan. It really was a time when wrestling was transitioning from this regional spectacle to the global phenomenon that it was. And, this is where you see the evolution of the World Wrestling Federation because, WrestleMania 1, as good as it was and groundbreaking as it was, still had that sort of low-key independent feel. WrestleMania 2 broke the mold by going in 3 different locations, simulcasting, using closed circuit and pay-per-view for the first time. WrestleMania 3, I think, and I don't know, but I think they said, we have to do something that makes us stand out. Crockett and the NWA was gaining momentum. They'd already been there for a while anyway. You obviously had the NWA in Starrcade. And this was, I think, their opportunity to kind of go, we've tested the waters. We know it's there. We know it's big. Let's go for it. How are we going to do it? And of course, they promoted it with the 2 at the time biggest talents in the World Wrestling Federation, the most over personality at that point in the history of professional wrestling. I don't think you can say he is now. If you look at the grand scheme of thing, that's got to be The Rock or John Cena. That's the most, over of all time. But the immortal Hulk Hogan in that main event slot going up against friend, foe, the 8th wonder of the world, the man who really, if you put it on paper, should have walked out as the World Wrestling Federation champion that night, who achieved great success outside of the World Wrestling Federation, but really came into his own when he was paired up with the Weasel, Bobby the Brain Heenan. And who didn't have their game elevated when they were paired up with Bobby the Brain Heenan?
Heenan was the best.
Absolutely. I mean, he broke the mold, and we will be doing a Legends episode on Heenan. I mean, that could take years to do. Now, one of the things about this, and one of the things that's also referenced in the book, and if you listen to the interview, they touch on this as well, is the attendance. Now, it boasted an attendance of 93,173, which was a Guinness World Record at the time, but the actual number is reported as being closer to 78,000. It was a record-breaking crowd for an indoor event in North America, and as Keith says in the interview, McMahon didn't want an empty seat in the Pontiac Silverdome. So he would have done whatever he could to make that event either sell out legitimately or sell out via a mix of, underhanded tactics or, whatever you want.
Vince McMahon doing Vince McMahon things.
Vince doing Vince. But I remember watching I think it was one of the DVDs that came out, maybe The True Story of WrestleMania, when that came out a few years ago. And they showed the scene of the car park and how quiet the car park was at Pontiac. And then all of a sudden it filling up and overflowing, and the amount of humanity that was there. I mean, if COVID was around, it would have been the biggest COVID hotspot globally at the time. It was incredible though, wasn't it? And something that I think we now take it for granted, that when you look at, you know, live attendance gate records, every month the PLE is breaking an attendance gate record. This was 78,000 or not, this was groundbreaking.
Yeah, it was absolutely. It was completely unheard of. I mean, like you said, now we take it for granted because it happens so frequently. And obviously, you know, over the years since the bigger stadiums are built, bigger arenas are built, they find different ways of doing it. I mean, obviously, WWE now, you know, they make more seats available because they've scaled down with their entrance ways. They now have more like a basic like screen thing, which, you know, I'm a sucker for the old ones where they used to have their own specific entrance stage or entrance way to fit the pay-per-view they were doing. I used to love the Armageddon ones and that, with like the tanks and the, you know, almost like the post-apocalyptic settings and things like that. Backlash with the swinging hooks and things like that. Yeah, you know, but I think it works fine. It is simplified. It works. And I think, you know, the more people you can get into to see the shows, the better. Not to say that, you know, fanatics that now run things are not milking it for what it's worth, and, you know, almost, you know, charging quadruple what the average price is worth for PLEs these days. But, you know, unfortunately for all those people that won't pay it, there's all those people that will pay it and have the, you know, luxury of paying it. So, but it was a huge statement. It was a huge statement back then. Absolutely.
I mean, if you were Crockett, if you were the NWA at this point, and I'd love to bring Joe onto this conversation right now, because we know from the Rumble 92, Joe was a massive, and is a massive NWA, you know, Crockett fan. If you were the NWA, what would you have been feeling right now? Because I can imagine it would have been very much squeaky bum time seeing 93,000 fans or whatever it was, an event of this magnitude with this amount of celebrity involvement as well, press publicity, pop culture phenomenon. This would have made you think, oh dear, we're in trouble.
Yeah, it's that kind of like, oh, we've got noisy neighbours type thing, and it's like, here comes this company which, you know, were known. They were known. WWF were known, but it's kind of like, wow, they're building something. They're getting bigger. They're making more noise. I wouldn't necessarily have thought straight away, oh, we're in trouble, but it's kind of like, okay, you know, they're making a statement. And then obviously, as time goes past, talent from NWA goes to either WCW or they, you know, go to WWE, you know, and it kind of goes that way. But it was also the finances as well. You know, Vince, as we know, with what he was building, they were making serious money and they had the opportunity to keep going bigger and better. What I will do, and obviously we'll probably discuss it at some point down in the future. If you think like, you know, WrestleMania 4 and 5, both being at the Trump Plaza, and it's obviously a smaller setting in that, it's kind of an interesting direction, isn't it? If you think WWE have managed to go on this they went big, very big, and then they didn't capitalize on that and go, oh, actually, we're going to do 2 years back to back at the Trump Plaza and we're going to scale it right down again. It was a strange move.
It was a strange move. And you're right, we will talk about that because, you know, you look at the venue for Trump Plaza, it had a completely different feel to it. This was an outside stadium. I mean, to see the pictures now of the Pontiac Silverdome are heartbreaking, really, you know, because it was shut. They're meant to be demolitioning it if they haven't already. I saw a picture about 18 months, 2 years ago of what it looks like now. And it's heartbreaking to see it because it's got such a massive impact to wrestling fans. But one of the things that Mitch and Dimitri do on ACT is they do the alternate scenario. And just for a minute, I'm going to pretend that I'm a part of the Greek World Order and I'm going to nick that segment from Mitch and Dimitri. And we're going to do our own alternate legends scenario right now, because I want you to imagine 1987 and your NWA. Now, if you were putting NWA WrestleMania 3 on, what would have been your main event
Oh, Christ. Oh, I wouldn't.
You didn't know I was doing this, by the way. So
no, I didn't.
And the reason for asking this is to kind of identify the difference in evolution of the product, right? Because we all know WrestleMania 3 main event. It's a double main event, isn't it? It's Hogan Andre, it's Savage Steamboat. That's the two main events.
Yeah.
For the NWA, it's what could they have done to have mimicked or even surpassed the match quality of that double main event? And I can only think of one.
Cool.
The Nature Boy Ric Flair and the American Dream Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah.
In a no holds barred match. Or whatever that equivalent was. Because remember, we didn't have hardcore. We didn't have no holds barred.
No, we didn't.
They weren't afraid of doing things a bit off the bar, like the scaffold match that they did at the first Starrcade with the Legion of Doom and the Rock and the Midnight Express.
I mean, the NWA at the time didn't have like a massive roster. They had a good roster, but it wasn't like, gigantic.
No, it wasn't. It was headlined by Dusty Rhodes and the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Really.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you could have gone with that sort of match. I mean, I think those days as well, one of the pinnacles of a rivalry is you put them in a steel cage match. So I mean, I suppose they could have done that. But yeah, I mean, those two guys, I don't think you really pick NWA at that time. I don't think you really can pick any other two top stars to main event something on that scale. I really don't think you could.
But you think about the rest of the card, though, it would have been quite lackluster.
It would have been, yeah.
Really. 1985 is when they did the scaffold match with the LOD and the Midnight Express from Greensboro, North Carolina, as part of was it the Great American Bash? I think it was. So to replicate that now, I mean, they also did the dog collar match between Roddy Piper and the JYD.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't replicate that now. So I think they would have been... I can't imagine any other wrestling company at that time being able to put on an event the quality of just the double main event.
Yeah. I think as well, I think as you touched on, and one of the reasons why I said what I said, which I didn't say that I didn't like WrestleMania 3 or that I didn't think it was a good pay-per-view. I think it's at those times, I think it's shown in WrestleMania 1, 2, 3, 4, and sort of 4. Those, when you, like you said, you've got the double main event, you've got the big standout matches with the big top guys, which is why I think we ended up with, like Hillbilly Jim in his match against King Kong Bundy and the smaller people. And then we had, Hercules versus was it Billy Jack?
It was Hercules versus Billy Jack Haynes, yeah, and that full Nelson match and things, those sort of matches. And I think that is where you look at the World Wrestling Federation roster at the time as well. It, like we said about the NWA, I just think that because the World Wrestling Federation had the likes, you still had your Roddy Pipers, your Jake Roberts, and your Randy Savages, your Ricky Steamboats, and all that lot still on their roster. You can still put, a few name-worthy matches in there. Whereas NWA, like you said, you got your main event of Rhodes versus Flair, whichever stipulation of that match you want or match type you want to put there. And then, as you said, the rest of the card's going to be lackluster. And I think that's, WrestleMania's 1, 2, 3 specifically, because obviously 4 was a tournament, mainly a tournament anyway. But that's why we have those matches where we look at and go, I mean, to be fair, we did get Heart Foundation versus the British Bulldogs at WrestleMania 3. So, in terms of tag team competition, in terms of tag team competition, that's the only tag matchup I needed to see for a WrestleMania at that time would be to see 2 of the absolute best. I totally agree with you. I think if NWA were to have done their own WrestleMania 3, it definitely would have been Rhodes versus Flair. There's no, you can't, with the roster they had, you can't do better than that or bigger than that, in my opinion. Well, let's look at the impact of WrestleMania before we start looking at the card. It generated over $1.6 million in ticket sales which for 1987 economy was massive. But he secured, and again, doesn't sound a lot, but when you look at it back in 1987 and the 80s sort of era, $10.3 million in domestic pay-per-view revenue. Massive. It solidified the WWF status as a major entertainment company and really did kind of set the grounding. This was, I think WrestleMania 1 and 2 were the digging of the foundation trenches and the concrete being poured. But WrestleMania 3 was when the building started to occur, right?
Yeah.
If you use that analogy. And it really did pave the way for what they were going to do for future WrestleManias. It had an identity. And it's remembered for its iconic moments, its influence on what other companies did afterwards, because it really did kind of set the scene that once you hit pay-per-view, you've got to pull something out the bag. And love him or hate McMahon in recent memory, from recent times, he was and is a genius because he tapped into pop culture. He tapped in to that celebrity link between sport and entertainment. And just having someone like Alice Cooper, who, well, I didn't know who Alice Cooper was, right? But when I first saw him, like, what the bloody hell is this dude doing on the show? But you pair him up with someone like Jake the Snake Roberts.
Works perfectly.
It works, right? And for the first time with this one, they went all over. They were on talk shows. They were in the press. They were doing promotional activities. They managed to take the stigma of it being a wrestling product into a legitimate sports entertainment, quote the phrase there, model. It went mainstream at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was very smart as well because, obviously the demand, Vince would have known the demand for more tickets from WrestleManias 1 and 2. That he probably they sold out and sold out, and then looked at the demand was so high. And I think they looked and just went, do you know what? If we can go this big for WrestleMania 3 and it's a success, the sky's the limit. We can do pretty much whatever we want, and people will buy into it. And that's exactly one of the reasons why the World Wrestling Federation grew into the global phenomenon that it is still today, because it was about taking calculated risks, and Vince did that. And Vince was never afraid to do that. We've seen growing up what Vince is like. If we take something like the XFL, for example, didn't work the first time, didn't work the second time. Vince tried it. He took a risk, didn't pay off, and it's like, okay, well, I've not really lost too much. We're still a global juggernaut. It didn't really hurt them. And at an earlier stage in WrestleMania, to go that big, there's something when you see that introduction to WrestleMania 3 with Vince in the ring, and he does the Welcome to WrestleMania 3, and he announces Aretha Franklin. You can see that little sparkle in his eyes, that's as if as though he's thinking at that moment when he's sort of looking around and he's speaking to, addressing everyone, that he's around just thinking, wow, yeah, like this is it. There's no going back now. This is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Do you know what? I would love to have been a fly on the wall in the locker room, because we know what it's like now, and you and I have both been a part of it. Mike's a part of the wrestling scene. So's Dimitri. Joe's been around it for years as well. It's when you walk out into that venue and it's quiet, and you see the seats, you see the empty seats. It doesn't matter if you're in a bingo hall or if you're in a caravan park or a gym or what, a theater, whatever. When you walk out there and you see that ring set up and you see the entranceway and you see the mats and you see the barricades and you see the empty seats and you think, in an hour, I'm going to be in this ring entertaining people, you get a buzz.
Oh,
right?
100%.
When TNA came to Wembley, I had the honor of going backstage. I bumped into Hogan. I met Samoa Joe. And then I met Dixie a few times. And then they said, why don't you walk out? And I walked to the entrance ramp and went through the curtain at Wembley Arena and saw the six-sided ring and saw the seating empty. And I got goosebumps, right? Can you imagine what it would have been like for those performers to have competed in the biggest stage that any of them had ever competed, and the butterflies they must have had?
It's a dream, isn't it? It's an absolute dream. I mean, even as veterans and as as experienced as a lot of the guys were and how far they were into their careers at that time, even the biggest shows they had done were never on that scale. They never probably would have ever anticipated that they would ever get to walk out into crowds that big, into stadiums and arenas that huge. Because the average show that they would normally do would, maximum would just probably be a couple to a few thousand, probably at those times and earlier in their careers. But you're absolutely correct. Obviously, I've done small rooms, when I've done management or I've ring announced. I mean, even when I used to ring announce in my early days in the business and that, I used to get a buzz, because it's my job to pump the crowd up. And I would get that buzz. I would get that buzz being the voice that introduces, the talent to the ring. I would get buzz on commentary telling their stories. And then to be a part of it as a manager and I'm like, look, I know they're here to see the talent in the ring, but I'm not going to fade in the background. I'm going to make sure that I put my guy over the best I can as his manager. I'll interact with the crowd. The more heat I can get, the better. The boos I can get, the better. And I was watching when Cena got the no, hey, goodbye chance on Raw. I sat there and I was like, I had that on my last ever show I did. Yeah. I got that chant. And I'm thinking, I had it in a room, in a smaller room. And I'm thinking, I would have loved to have been where Cena is right now and had, X amount of 1,000 people do. It's got to be such a buzz to have the roar of so many thousands of people like directing that at you. That has got to be one hell of a buzz.
It's got to be a drug, it's an adrenaline thing. But I think 90, as much as I'm weird saying this, but 93,000 fans in today's era is nothing.
It's not.
No, it's nothing. It's a drop in the park. It's a theater in your local town. But this was an era where it was still trying to find its feet, where it was still trying to make itself legitimate, even though it wasn't. And if you think about it, apart from the King Kong Bundy Hillbilly Jim match, it wasn't really cartoonish. I mean, even the haircut match was brutal, right? It was.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like,
I mean, the Billy Jack Hastings, he was opened up, he was bleeding. That was, I think, one of the first times watching WWF at a young age of that product and actually seeing blood. Like, I think, you know, obviously, as we got to sort of like the later 80s and everything, they would obviously, it was still done scarcely, but you would still have it. I mean, you look at SummerSlam '88 when they do the back of the flashback of was it Brutus Barber and Outlaw Ron Bass, and there's blood there. They had to actually black and white it and put a censor over it and things like that. But I just want to quickly touch what you said about like the thousands of people. There's, and I'll say this because some people, it's a passing moment in time for people. You go back to WrestleMania 17 when the Undertaker comes out on his motorcycle. There's a camera shot which is like about a second and a half long, where the camera is actually behind the Undertaker on the stage, and you can see the crowd. And that was the first time I'd seen it from that perspective. I mean, obviously now we see cameramen follow talent through the gorilla to the outside, so you get to see that sort of thing more frequent now. But seeing that, I see an Undertaker on his bike like that, and he pumps his chest and puts his arm up in the air, and you can see a shot of the crowd at WrestleMania 17 with all the flashing lights and all that. Like, that was the first time I went, holy crap, that's insane.
Do you know what I would love for them to do, and they'll never be able to do it because it's practically impossible, is to have a head cam on when a superstar is on their way to the ring. So you imagine someone like Jey Uso coming down now doing the yeet and just having the camera on his head, or back in the day Austin coming out and just looking at the reaction, or Punk doing the CM Punk intro and actually seeing it from their perspective, right? This is what they're seeing. This is what we're getting.
Absolutely. But I think no matter even if that were possible and they did do that, you still don't get the full effect of it, being live. And you'll never fully replicate that, and which is a shame. But it's got to be the most amazing feeling in the world. It's got to be. But
let's take us back to talking a bit more about the pop culture side of it, because one of the things that I think with this pay-per-view more than ever, and bear in mind, to take your line, we're of a certain age, but we've watched pop culture and been involved in pop culture for many years. WrestleMania 3's influence can still be seen today. It can be seen in various TV shows and movies. Roseanne, How I Met Your Mother was a massive one that influenced some of that WrestleMania 3. There's a scene, I think, where Barney and Ted and Marshall are watching WrestleMania 3. Yeah. In that. You had films like The Wrestler, Fighting With My Family, that delve into the world of professional wrestling with stories from events like WrestleMania. And even Ted, I can't remember if it's in the TV series or in the two movies, but there is a reference to WrestleMania 3 in Ted.
Yeah.
It opens up the doors for them to appear in songs and music videos and inspiring fashion trends. And it also was the first time that we actually saw the potential of wrestling merchandise and sponsorships leading to this action figures and the video games and the sponsors for the future events. And whereas I think it's a very dangerous for us to turn around and say it's solely due to WrestleMania 3 that this happened, WrestleMania 3 has got such a massive part in this growth.
Yes.
That you can't not link it to it.
No, absolutely. I mean, if you look at you go further into towards the end of the 80s and everything, like we said, with like the movie No Holds Barred, it was a movie, obviously, essentially with Hogan, and then obviously having the character Zeus created for this movie, and then actually bring him in to align with Randy Savage, who was a Macho King at the time, to then actually bring the movie world into the WWE world, where it's kind of like breaking down that fourth wall where two worlds have collided. You've got the product and then you've got the movie, and you're bringing this character in from the movie screens into the real world. I mean, if you're, going to those live events, if you're Saturday night's main event in 1989 when Hogan's in the ring and Zeus comes out, and you've only seen this guy on, in the trailers for No Holds Barred, and all of a sudden this guy's right in front of your very eyes, coming, it reminds me of the almost like a real life version of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Last Action Hero, where the characters come out of the actual screen into the real world, and it's quite a surreal thing, especially if you're a child and you're thinking, oh my god. And then given props, to how they did it, they made him exactly as he was on screen, this massive threat. This guy wasn't a wrestler, he was an actor, and he portrayed what he did so well at Tiny Lister. And I thought this was genius marketing, absolute genius. What a way to get people on board with the movie you're putting out there by bringing it into the product. Because Hulk Hogan is not Hulk Hogan in the movie; he's Rip, but it's still Hogan, and it's just it was brilliant. It was brilliant.
Well, that thought there until the summer, because we will be talking about 89 SummerSlam in the summer when we do SummerSlam. Let's look at the card, and we're not going to go match by match and go massive critique on each of the matches because we don't need to do that. I want to get your opinion on some of them though. The opening contest was the Can-Am Connection, which was Rick Martel and Tom Zenk, who would later on become the Z-Man in WCW, facing off against Cowboy Bob Orton and the Magnificent Morocco. I mean, not seeing Rick Martel and Tom Zenk before as a tag team and not really seeing Bob Orton and Morocco at the first time, two big guys, they could work. It was a great gelling of that high-flying style of the Can-Am Connection with that brawling, very strong base of Morocco and Cowboy.
Yeah, I mean, Can-Am Connection was basically like the early versions of like Strike Force, really, wasn't it? Let's face it. Obviously, Zenk being replaced by Tito, but because it's really interesting watching back, seeing Tom Zenk wrestle, because one of the very few memories I have from early WCW days when I used to watch was I remember Tom Zenk as Z-Man when he had the rivalry with Lex Luger and he had the whole broken neck scenario and all that. But I mean, it was good. I mean, yeah, Orton being thrown in as well, and Morocco, that was a strange pairing. It's one of those ones. It is a forgettable match. It doesn't overly stand out. It's not remembered a lot by many when people go, "Oh, do you remember WrestleMania 3? Oh, yeah, I remember that awesome tag team match between Tom Zenk and the Can-Am connection against Don Morocco and Bob Orton and that." But it served its purpose because it gave Can-Am Connection a platform to really introduce themselves as a team, and obviously them picking up the win the way they did. It could have, and maybe in some people may disagree, should have really have launched them, into more popularity and into maybe more in the tag team division than what they really did.
Quite possibly, but you got to think,
yeah,
Tom Zenk going to WCW or NWA at that point didn't help. Yeah. I mean, if we want to keep ripping off alternate commentary table, sorry guys, love you really. We could do an alternate scenario of Tom Zenk not going, and would have Strikeforce have lived to the same level as them. Maybe we will at a certain point. A couple of other matches we've referenced Hercules, Billy Jack Haynes. You talk about a match that didn't really stand out. That is definitely one of them. But it was the mix. It was the next two matches really that were gimmicks that I think you still talk about them for different reasons. The mixed tag team match, Hillbilly Jim, the High Tide Kid, and Little Beaver went over, defeated King Kong Bundy, Little Tokyo, and Lord Littlebrook. The match is really known infamously for Bundy's attack on Little Beaver. But what I want to focus on more than anything is the drop from King Kong Bundy at WrestleMania 2, facing Hulk Hogan for the World Wrestling Federation Championship in a steel cage, to now being in a 6-man mixed tag team match.
Yeah, it's a massive drop, isn't it? And then obviously, as we know, Bundy would be used more scared. Sorry, I'm replaying that moment of Bundy's attack on him in my head.
The problem is, I watched it last night. Yesterday.
Yeah, I watched WrestleMania 3 last night. Sorry. So, it's a massive change in that year. And then obviously we know Bundy would eventually leave and then not come back until sort of like the mid 90s when he would join the $1 Million Corporation and that. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe Vince just didn't see anything else from him. Maybe Vince saw Bundy as probably the best option at the time to main event WrestleMania 2 with Hogan because of his size. We know Vince loves big guys. We know that. It's a forgettable match. For the most part, with an unforgettable moment, which I wish I could forget. But I mean, you touched on it at the start of the show where you said, it's not very PC. Which I get. No, it's not very PC. But I don't think it should be ignored, and I don't think it should be edited because these things were a sign of the times. It shows how the world has changed, evolved or de-evolved, depending on your stance. So, excuse me. I just don't think these things should be altered on the simple fact that you don't want to offend anybody. Because the way I see it is, at the end of the day, whether you're offended or not, it's a learning curve. It's part of history. It happened. Learn from it.
Yeah.
See it for what it was and just, move on.
I'm not saying I'm categorized. I know you're not saying it. I'm not saying I'm offended by it. I think it was some of the terminology that was used in the match, some of the build-up. But that you're right. That's 80s.
But yeah, some people would be offended by that, especially
some people
in
would
today's
be.
world. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. I mean, but bear in mind, we had Doink, Dink, Wink, and Pink. At one point.
I love them.
I can't wait to do that one. I really want to do that one.
Survivor Series 94 is one of my favourite pay-per-views for just because it was crazy.
Yeah, we'll do that one. The next one was a match where was disappointing on a lot of levels because anyone who knew what this man did prior to the WWF, well, these men prior to the WWF would have gone, what in the blue heck is going on? The King, Harley Race, and the Junkyard Dog. the loser must bow. He forced the JYD to bow to race. Of course, this one was a really nice touch at the time, having the queen of wrestling, the fabulous Moolah, accompany him and Bobby the Brain Heenan to ringside, getting involved in the match. The JYD, you knew it wasn't going to happen. He put the cloak on, and that all did. Harley Race, former NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, now competing in the World Wrestling Federation as the King of the Ring. Not as bad as the polka dots for the American Dream, but still.
No, I'm still bitter at the whole Harley Race WWF run. I'm still bitter. But honestly, this guy was responsible for so much. You know, even when it comes to, you know, being a mentor and a trainer to some of the biggest names in the business that have preceded him. A guy that I loved him in WCW. He was a big threat when he went to WCW. You know, when you brought in Mr. Hughes and all that. But that's the thing where I think Vince, as much of a genius as Vince McMahon was, and he made some terrific calls, I think he made some tragic calls, some very, very bad calls. Because, you know, if you look at, as we touched on, and you rightly said about how, you know, NWA's roster was, you know, we said about how limited that was, and you can only really go with Flair Rhodes as the main event, whereas WWF had a bigger roster with some more bigger names on there. But Vince didn't utilize some of the names he had. It was almost like Hogan's the guy, and we've got his opponent, like in this case, Andre. For WrestleMania 3, you look at, you've got your Jake Roberts on there, you know, you've got your Randy Savages, you've got your Ricky Steamboat. All right, Savage Steamboat, we'll leave that out of the conversation because that is a great match and that is a great pairing and one of the greatest matches of all time, and not just in WrestleMania. But you do look at some of the other, and you think, well, actually, if we was to mess around with the card a little bit, you could probably put that guy against that guy. We could probably put this team against this team. And actually, automatically, it becomes a slightly better card. But for whatever reason, it's almost like Vince went, right, well, this match, and this match, they have to happen. I'll just throw whoever together and just, you know.
I think it also comes down to the fact that, you know, and we've seen this so many times over the years, Vince is vindictive of star who's made it in another company who then comes over. For some reason, wants to sabotage them. And that's what he did with Harley Race. I mean, the minute Harley Race went back to WCW and became a manager and managed, you know, Big Van Vader, straight, some of the best promos in the world. Harley Race had it all. He had the ability. He didn't have the look. You know, he wasn't the Hulk Hogan, right? But he made up for that in pure toughness. The guy was
the same could be said about Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes wasn't like the biggest guy, and people say, "Oh, he was out of shape." You know, he's this fat, out of shape guy and everything. All right, I see your point, but you can't bet Dusty Rhodes' charisma and what he could do in the ring. No. You know, it's like when they used to talk about Bray Wyatt back when he was Husky Harris. He had this little phrase said about him. He was a tank with a Ferrari engine.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what some of these guys were. They weren't built like athletes, but they could go like athletes. They could perform like athletes and mix it with the best. And that's what guys like Harley Race and Dusty Rhodes and that were.
Let's run through the rest of the card and we'll pick up on a couple of matches in one go at the end. So the Dream Team went up against the Rougeaus. That was Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. The introduction of Dino Bravo, causing the split in that. We had the 6-man match that you referenced earlier between two of the, if not the greatest tag teams of that generation. Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, the Hart Foundation, and the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, and the Dynamite Kid. When you know, I am not going back to the WrestleMania 7 discussion of the Rest in Peace barometer, but when you just look at that match and realize that 3 out of 4 of those are no longer with us.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, yeah.
It does, doesn't it? It does put that into perspective, you know. And I think in some ways, I mean, especially watching this match again last night, obviously I realised exactly what you said. Sometimes I go back to some of these matches where a lot of them are no longer with us. And I do have a greater appreciation for them and a lot of feeling more grateful that, you know, we were able to grow up and watch what they did. You know, and I really hope that the younger generations and the younger generations of fans to come, the ones that are not even born yet, will still learn enough and be educated enough to actually go back that far in time for them to witness these true greats.
Yeah.
Because they're diamonds, absolute diamonds.
Yeah. Let's just run through the rest of the card. The natural Butch Reed went up against the Birdman, Coco Beware. Butch Reed went over. We had a tag match, which was the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov defeated the Killer Bees, Jumping Jim Brunzell and can't remember his name. Due to Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Dangerous Stanley Davis, wasn't it?
No, that was in the 6 man.
Oh, 6 man. Sorry.
Being attacked by Hacksaw Jim Duggan with a 2x4. We also had the Honky Tonk Man with Jake defeating Jake the Snake Roberts, who had Alice Cooper in his corner. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is when we're going to go to a break. We'll be back after this.
Macho Man Randy Savage, Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion, was in a state of shock when Ricky the Dragon Steamboat came back, yeah. But this time, in front of the largest audience in the world, I will not only embarrass you, not only pin you with the 1, 2, 3 count, but I'm going to put you out of wrestling for good. Oh yeah, Dragon, I am the Lord and Master of the Ring, and you're going to find that out one athlete to another right now. You can't be with me, no. History beckons the Macho Man, yeah.
All right, we're back talking WrestleMania 3 so far, almost an hour, talking about where it stands in history, talking about the card, talking about our memories of it, our reactions, and God knows what else we've touched on in the last 55 minutes. But now we're on to what I call the pinnacle of the card. 3 matches. You all know what 2 of them are going to be, but this one is a match that I've put in here. I'm going to talk about it now because of a comment made by Keith Elliott Greenberg in that amazing interview with Mike released yesterday on Celebrate Wrestling about Bigger, Better, Badder. It was the hair versus hair match between Hot Rod Rowdy Roddy Piper and adorable Adrian Adonis, where Piper was going for another retirement. And the reason, all right, this match was not good. Yes, it wasn't good. It was god awful. But 2 things stand out for me in this. 1, the debut of the Barber Brutus Beefcake, who literally in the match previous to that went face after leaving the Dream Team. And the second is actually a comment I heard in the interview with Keith, which is about them having to do planning out the event and actually having them time map someone getting their head shaved in rehearsals. Now, Mike expressed shock at that. I'm totally shocked that they did that. But it makes sense. But it just kind of goes to show the dedication these guys do in terms of getting the timing right. The match, as I said, shocking, but it was the fallout of it that that made it quite interesting.
Yeah. It is a shock. It is a shock, and I mean, as you said, I'm glad that Piper went over on that one, and obviously seeing Brutus Barber Beefcake as it were, now going face. Obviously, he lost earlier in the night and he was abandoned by his teammates. Adrian Adonis was. I mean, he's one of those characters which, even to this day, I look back at him and just, he was a really, really quirky guy. And I've always wondered, what it is like for a guy like him who has this image that goes with his character, with his gimmick, and then you're being told you're losing your hair. Now, to be fair to Vince McMahon, he's been there. He ended up doing it many years later. It worked. I just wonder what goes through your mindset if you're, it's a big part of who you are, and then all of a sudden you're having that taken from you.
This is where I wish I could play sound effects, because it would be one sound effect that comes to mind. Nope. Show me the money.
Show me the money. Yeah.
It's got to be, right? It has to be. I mean, it's going to be a
You would hope so. You would hope so. Your hair will grow back. You know, your hair most of the time grows back. So, you know, it's a good payday. But
unless it was part of a longer angle, which we saw with the Body Donnas back in the mid-90s. I mean, ultimately, this wasn't part of an angle because Adonis never really came back after that. It was more like a retirement for him. That kind of brings us to the two main events, the double main event. One match arguably is considered one of the greatest in wrestling history, not just Mania, but in wrestling history against all opponents. And the other one is the match which Hulk Hogan has continuously elevated and increased the weight of André the Giant.
Oh, did you know, actually, fun fact for everybody, did you know that WrestleMania 3 main event, Hogan slammed André the Giant? Did you know that?
No way.
No, I know, right?
No idea.
I know. Well, anyway.
I didn't even know Hogan was in the main event.
No, I know. Yeah.
Oh, anyway. The match. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Intercontinental Championship. The Macho Man, escorted to the ring by the lovely Elizabeth. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, escorted by the not-so-lovely George the Animal Steel, doing the whole can't talk gimmick. And it's really weird, right? Because Savage is the heel in this. There's a controlling aspect to the relationship between Savage and Liz, which you saw in the promo earlier on in the night.
Yes, yeah, I was going to reference that, yeah.
Which is an actual heel. But then you've got George the Animal Steel, who's basically stalking Liz. That's a heel. That's a face.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you've got Ricky Steamboat, who just wants revenge. It's like, what?
It's a messed up family, isn't it? Really, it really is.
The dad.
Yeah.
I mean, if you suddenly saw the gorilla coming at you, what would you do?
I tell you honestly, I referenced that promo and that when they wanted to get the interview with Liz before Savage walks in, and I think it was Mary Hart, wasn't it? That was the
it was
celebrity guest. Yeah, she was trying to interview Liz, and then Savage comes in with his ways, interrupts it, doesn't want the spotlight on Liz, and he says, I'm the Intercontinental Champion, and he's like basically trying to build it out and say, oh, you're not going to get a better interview than me, sort of thing, and he tells Liz to basically hide talent out of there to get to the aisle and all that. I mean, do you know what? Going off just a fraction quickly, every time I look back on and see Elizabeth, I mean, I honestly, that woman was the epitome of beauty back then. She really was. Yeah. And obviously she went from this elegant to a really hot, beautiful woman in WCW, with the whole NWO thing. And, and I look back and think, what would, if she hadn't have lost her life, if she was still with us today, the stories she could tell, to have been the wife and partner of the Macho Man Randy Savage, and the experiences she had in the business as the first lady of wrestling, so to speak, as she'd been referred to. And I don't think that gets asked enough. What would Liz say? Like, what did she experience in the better times, before
she's
the dark?
The forgotten voice, isn't she? I mean,
she really is.
I don't have many regrets in my podcasting careers, like from TSC to TWS to Two Men to whatever. But there are individuals that I wished I could have sat down with.
Yeah.
One of them is the Macho Man, right? I would love to have sat down with Randy Savage and chewed the fat. I don't know if I could have understood what he was saying, but I would love to have sat down and just spoken to him. I spoke to his brother, Lanny Poffo, on numerous occasions. Yeah. And Lanny was a gent, right?
I still struggle to keep reminding myself that Lanny's not here anymore.
I know.
Because Lanny was always about. And yeah.
3 years. So the one regret was Randy Savage. The other regret was Davey Boy Smith. I'm a Brit, right? You want to speak to the Brit. And the third one was Liz and Sherry. But Liz, because like I think it's fair to say, for any of us of a male demographic listening to this who are wrestling fans, our first proper crush from that era was Liz. I mean, she had everything, and they put her in some quite risky storylines. You talk about the getting hit from the ringside, right? On Saturday night's main event, to having Savage attack Hogan in the backstage area, to SummerSlam 88 with the pulling of the skirt off. And she was the real TNA before TNA became a thing.
But it wasn't a short-lived thing, because you think went all the way through to like 92 when you had the Flair Savage rivalry where, you know, Flair claimed she was his first, and they had those risque pictures that they were going to unveil to the world at WrestleMania 8 and all those things, and you threw Mr. Perfect in there. And honestly, I don't think to this day she gets the acknowledgement and the credit that she deserves, and she's not talked about enough. I don't know whether that's because of, you know, the controversy surrounding her passing, which I'm so grateful. And I know some people will have this stance of Lex Luger where they don't agree with him and they hold him responsible. For me, I think that, you know, he's taken his share of responsibility. He knows if she wasn't in his life and around him so frequently, she probably wouldn't have fallen so far off the wagon as she did. And I give him absolute props for owning up to what he believes is his role in that. But no one talks about her these days.
No, they don't.
And I think it is a tragedy.
Just going back to Lex Luger a minute. I mean, there's a great interview with Chris Van Vliet on Insight, where he I'm a massive Lex Luger fan. I always have been.
Same.
But to see there and to listen to him bare his soul, and I'll tell you what, love him or hate the guy for what happened, and for someone who is made weapons and suffered, it's Lex Luger, right? Yeah. I mean, you no one wants to go through what that guy went through, and it was a tragic accident, and Liz has got to take some accountability for it as well.
Of course, absolutely.
Right? They can't all put it on Lex Luger, and I get it. That's a different topic for a different day. But, you know, Liz has got to take some accountability on it. But what I would say to bring this back, Liz was one of those generational talents who, you put it eloquently earlier on, was beautiful when she started, but she was even more beautiful when she left. That grace, that maturity that she developed, the just pure beauty.
And I think from a lot of the stories that we hear about, we've heard stories, obviously, Dark Side of the Ring covered things and as well. And, you know, for a woman who, you know, was thrown into the spotlight, that had so much attention on her, who had gone through some very difficult times in her life, and some very, very dark times in her life, to still show up on television with this looking as beautiful as ever, that played to the crowd as amazing as she did, with a smile on her face, and went to work. I mean, the respect for that woman, someone that she needs to be discussed more often and not be forgotten.
And in fairness, a widely reported controlling relationship with Randy Savage. But we're steering away from the match. Let's talk about the match, because this is as close to 6 stars as you're ever going to get. This was a Meltzer 10 out of 10 on the Observer rankings, right? But why? What is it about this match that from 1987 to 2025, almost 40 years, we are still talking about this match? It is still there. May not be in the top 5 anymore, but it's still there in the top 10 across any company, any era. Why?
I do you know what? I actually don't know if I can really actually answer that question, because I've always wondered to myself, why is this match as good as it is? I mean, it is what I call a wrestling clinic. I mean, first of all, it's not a sports entertainment match. It's a wrestling match. And I think that in itself separates it from a lot of its predecessors in terms of matches that qualify for greatest matches ever. It's a wrestling match between two individuals in their prime who were big stars that were being held at that Intercontinental title level. Could quite easily have been main event again. Well, Savage was being built to be that next guy, as we would find out the following year at WrestleMania 4. Steamboat was already a main event guy who had done it all with the likes of Flair and Jake Roberts and that, and now going with Macho Man. I think it's testament to Ricky Steamboat that no matter where on a card you put him, no matter who his opponent is, Ricky Steamboat will have a great match and make someone look $1 million. And he will still look like one himself.
I totally get you with that, but I kind of want to just play I want to flip something that you just said.
Yeah,
that,
sure.
Steamboat could go with, had already gone with the likes of Ric Flair. He may have already done that, but it was because of this match, in my opinion, that when he went back to WCW, we had the epic match at Wrestle War. We had the Great American Bash. We had Beach Blast with the Nature Boy Ric Flair for the world title. There's that epic 2 out of 3 falls match. Yeah, Wrestle War. It was an opportunity.
91. It was an opportunity that Vince wasn't giving him, and I think that's evident when, and I still can't believe they did it, when they decided to gimmick him by having him come out as, blowing the flames and putting the dragon stuff on. It looked great, but to me, it dulled down the importance of having someone like Ricky Steamboat on your roster. It basically, I wouldn't necessarily say make a mockery of him, because he's still, if you put him in the ring, what happens bell to bell is what really counts. But yeah, Vince obviously just decided that, they weren't going to do much more with him, and he wasn't going to be one of the main top stars in the company going forward. And I'm glad that WCW gave him that opportunity to, be more of himself and to be one of the top stars in WCW. And, I'm thankful to WCW because they gave us those matches.
Yeah, totally, and I agree with you about the characterization of the Dragon Ricky Steamboat wasn't needed, and it did ruin the character. But the match, it stands the test of time. It's one that you could just watch. It's a classic, what I would call an exhibition match.
Yeah,
I mean, you can pick it up, you can play it. You don't need to know the context. You don't need to know the storyline. You don't even need to watch the event. You could just pick it up and watch it.
Yeah,
it was tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, like I said, it was a clinic, and I just think, like, from bell to bell, I mean, they were just so in sync with each other as well. It was like, this is why I say it's almost the perfect wrestling match.
And you've got to give props as well to the ref, because the ref was in the right spot, the right time. And a ref plays, and I don't think referees get as much credit as what they do, because they are the third man in that ring. They have to tell a story, and the ref played it really well. Obviously, we all know the finish. The Macho Man loses the Intercontinental Championship to the Dragon Ricky Steamboat. Steamboat doesn't really have as good a run as he could have done with the belt, and in fact, at WrestleMania 4, he gets knocked out in the first round of the tournament. Savage goes on to win the whole thing, but that does bring us up to the main event. The World Wrestling Federation Championship, the newly healed André the Giant paired up with Bobby Heenan, facing off against some dude who wore red and yellow, called, I think his name was, do you know? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
It was Rip. It was Rip.
Yeah, it was Rip, wasn't it? Yeah. Terry Bollea. Rip. Yeah. No, honestly, no, to be fair, I've got to stay true to my Hulkamaniac ways of those times, because I was, and I even since I have no regrets. My opinion of Hogan has changed over the years, but I will forever, from the 80s to early 90s, and being the guy that was responsible for my fandom, and that I'll forever be a Hulkamaniac. So I just don't agree with who the person is these days, unfortunately. But yeah.
Well, let's talk about the bit. We're not going to talk much about the match, because the match is just known for one thing, right? It's known for the body slam, heard around the world.
Oh, he body slammed him.
He did. Did you know he was £2,500?
£2,500. I thought he was 7,000 tons.
Oh my God! Yeah, you might be right, actually. Or was it 250,000 tons?
What if Hogan didn't actually slam André the Giant, and John Cena, a young John Cena, was already there, and actually was the one that helped lift André up and slam him down, because we couldn't see him back then.
You can't see me.
No, I'm sorry, listeners. That was just ridiculous.
You kind of took it a bit too far there, right? You could have said that André just kind of jumped for Hogan, and you could have done that. You could have said that Bobby Heenan was the one who body slammed
Andre could have had us fooled all the time. He was that athletic. He could literally do that. Yokozuna could, according to The Undertaker. So who's to say Andre could?
And according to Lex Luger as well. But, you know, we are taking the mick out of this match because that is unfortunately what it's become now is a mick take. But let's not take away. This is the match that made WrestleMania the success. And the build up to this match was beautiful. The press conference, the ripping of the shirt, the cutting of the chest with the cross, the press conference, the contract signing, the promos in the event, all led up to this.
It's a shame the match was never going to ever live up to the hype. Well, it really wasn't. Because the build-up, as you said, it was a chef's kiss. It was it was perfect. Everything that they did to build that match was perfect. Even up to, literally, I say up to the bell ringing, it was perfect. The standoff at the beginning of the match, actually seeing someone towering over Hogan and making Hogan look small. That in itself, it wasn't a great wrestling match. It was a great spectacle. That's what it comes down to.
But it couldn't be a great wrestling match. And this is not, I'm not knocking Hogan, I'm not knocking Giant here, but it couldn't be a great wrestling match because Hogan wasn't the best catch-as-catch-can style wrestler. And he also, the Giant, wasn't in the best physical health to undertake the match. The problem with this one is I actually think it did a disservice to itself because if this match hadn't been on the same card as Ricky Steamboat, Randy Savage, you would still be talking about it, right? It would be the main event. But this was overshadowed by Ricky Steamboat, although it got the recognition and Savage Steamboat didn't, if you know what I mean. I think
as well is you divide this match into two things. Number one, it's for the younger audience who don't necessarily care about the wrestling aspect. They don't fully understand the wrestling aspect.
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest things you'll ever see. But as an adult that gets the wrestling and the business and that, it is, it's not a great match. But you get the way it's built. And as you said, Andre not being in the best of health, you know, again, respect for him because of the things he did while he was in so much pain, bless him. And, you know, what I do love about it is obviously Andre, Vince, and that they all knew that Andre was coming to the end of in-ring competition. We saw that, you know, in the later WrestleManias where he'd make cameos and whatnot. And for me, it was a nice swan song for Andre on the biggest, probably, well, at the time it was the biggest stage there was. Maybe for that night, they could have put the title on Andre had he walk out and then have Hogan defeat him. Similar to like what The Undertaker did at Survivor Series, won it and then lost it on Tuesday in Texas. The
problem with that, though, I think we're in an era where you don't want the fans to go home unhappy. And if the fans, they weren't, I hate the term, but we use it all the time. They weren't smart, right? Kayfabe was still very prevalent back in the 80s. And that is something that I think we forget right the way through until around the early mid-90s.
Well, we referenced it, didn't we, when we did... Yeah, we referenced that, didn't we, when we did the WrestleMania 7 show that we did recently. As well, we talked about fans going home happy and what if they'd done this. So if you watched any of the WrestleManias, you never saw the heel going over in the main event. No.
Because that was it. That's, you know... So I don't think they would have done that. I agree with you. It would have been cool to have seen it, right? But we never would have seen it now. But I was just going to say, I think the formula of this match has been replicated successfully 3, maybe 4 times.
Yeah.
WrestleMania 17, Austin Rock with the Austin heel turn to get, you know, that shock value. WrestleMania X8 between The Rock and Hogan. And ultimately, WrestleMania 41 with Cody Cena, the biggest heel turn.
Yeah, but you're missing, you know, the one of the really important ones, WrestleMania 38, Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn.
Anyway, that's WrestleMania 3, guys. Just to bring it, but you have to end it on a sour note, don't you? Just to bring it back, though, I mean, it wasn't the greatest, but everything in this, all of the matches combined, the excitement, the packagery, the tagline, the intro, you know exactly where you were where you first watched WrestleMania 3. Yeah. I was sat in pool at my home in the lounge with my dad with a bowl of popcorn, sat there watching WrestleMania 3.
I was at my grandparents' watching it on recorded VHS because it was recorded on Sky. The following day, watching it on with my granddad, and just wanting Hogan to win. Give me a time machine.
Yeah, no, me too.
Give me a time machine. Yeah, give me a time machine.
20 years later, sat at home with a box of popcorn, with my dad in bed, me sat in his chair, watching WrestleMania 3.
It's it is bittersweet, isn't it? I mean, you know the situation regarding my son, so I won't go into that. But
yeah.
You know, with my son and his fandom growing and having the opportunities to educate my son and the love that my son had, not for the likes of John. He wasn't a Cena fan. He loved the guys that could wrestle. He loved the Samoa Joes. He did love Hogan. He did love Undertaker, Finn Balor, and those guys. But you know, having those moments, I remember the first time I ever Ring of Honor on for my son, and I was thinking, I don't know if he's going to enjoy this because he doesn't really know anyone. He was hooked. I've got this great photo of him like sitting on the sofa watching it, and his jaws dropped. And he's like, because he's watching. I think it was Dalton Castle, and I can't remember who it was in the Bullet Club, but there was this going on, and his jaw just dropped. And I went, "What did you think?" And he went, "That was awesome." And he was only like 4 or 5 years old at the time. And these are the moments that mean the most, is when you're passing that love and that fandom onto your son or your grandchild, and you know, and
your daughter,
those generations, or your daughter, absolutely. So yeah, but my stepdaughter become a Cena fan like her mother, and that. So I just yeah.
I've tried for years. I've tried for years to get my daughter to watch He-Man and She-Ra, but nah, won't happen.
No.
Too scared of turtle.
At least my son got into Ghostbusters. That pleased me very much. And that'll probably please Mike as well. So that's one of the things Mike and I share. But yeah, so WrestleMania 3 in a nutshell, what a spectacle. It will forever be legendary. I didn't say I didn't like it. I just think that, you know, aside from obviously the spectacle of the build of the main event and obviously the Savage Steamboat match, I said it was overrated. I think some people class the pay-per-view, the event as a whole, a little too high, in my opinion. But I have love and appreciation for it, and I understand why you do, because the child in me is thinking, "Oh, WrestleMania 3, wow, that was memorable, that was amazing." The adult in me that's learned a lot since is like, it was a great spectacle. It's one of the most important moments in history that paved the way for even bigger moments over the years. That will never be replicated because of where it stands and for what it did for the company and for wrestling as a whole. So yeah, WrestleMania 3, bigger, better, badder. It definitely was that for its time. So yeah.
Now, we were going back to January. Next week, we'll be doing WrestleManias 4, 5, and 6. We're not. Let's see for WrestleMania 3. I think, to sum up what Stefan said, it's everything we've said and more. And if you haven't seen it, you can watch it on Netflix. WWE on Netflix globally, internationally, in the UK and in Europe and Canada. You can watch it on Netflix or on Peacock in the US. Check it out. Watch the classic wrestling event. Don't miss out on it. That's it for us. We're going to go to our last break of the evening. When we come back, I will be here doing the wrap up. Stefan, we'll speak to you next week when we talk Die Rocky Die, which we taped last week.
Yeah.
Bit of editing needed now on that because I had a cold when we recorded that one, so I need to do a bit.
You delayed Die Rocky Die for a week after all my blood, my sweat, and my tears. That's the thanks I get.
Yeah, we talk WrestleMania 3 instead.
Okay then.
All right.
Thanks everyone. Cheers.
And I'm the boss. We'll see you next time. And that's it for this week. What a bumper show we just did, talking all about WrestleMania 3. Thanks to Stefan, of course, for joining me there. I mean, such a great pay-per-view, such a powerful one as well when you look at the card and the history and really what it did for the business and for the sport that we all love. Last plug, really, if you haven't listened to it yet, check it out. Keith Elliott Greenberg talking to Mike McGuire about Bigger, Better, Badder, the new book by Keith, released by ECW Press, available now. Check it out on Celebrate Wrestling's podcast stream, talking all about possibly the greatest WrestleMania event of the 80s, WrestleMania 3. Now, coming up on Celebrate Wrestling this week, we've got a lot more for you, including this Saturday. Mitch and Dimitri are back with the alternate commentary table, one of the best wrestling shows on the interweb at this moment in time. These guys are absolutely fantastic. If you've never checked them out before, if you just listen to me or if you just listen to Mike and you haven't listened to Mitch and Dimitri, please do. You are guaranteed a non-stop 100% laugh from two cool Greek dudes. Check out the alternate commentary table this Saturday night, only on Celebrate Wrestling. And Sunday, Mike's back with McGuire on Wrestling, the flagship show with Dave Meltzer, Joe Aguinaldo, and whoever else. It's a great one. Every week, each and every week on Celebrate Wrestling. And join in the conversation on the Facebook page. Next week, right here on Legends, we're going to go back to scheduled programming and talk Die Rocky Die. As we said, a little bit of editing now, because I had a cold when we recorded that. And then we'll be back into WrestleMania season. Stay tuned to Facebook. We're going to have a lot more listener interactions coming up. We got some questions. We've got some more polls. So please make sure your voices are heard. Thanks for joining me and Stefan this week on Legends. We will see you next week. Until then, I'll see you at the matches. Bye-bye now.
This has been Legends and Champions with Andy Evans. Thank you for listening.